So people here, it's important that you put your name and email in the chat so that we can make sure we get the PDF of the slides out to you, a link to the video, which will be on YouTube. And answer your questions. Put your name in the chat. All right, I guess we should get going then. All right, thanks to all coming. What we're going to do tonight is our main member meeting agenda for Climate Reality Chicago. Brief update on some a leadership meeting that we had offsite with 9 of us that in the leadership group. And I just want to share just a couple of things that happened out there. There was about a 5-hour meeting. We don't get together in person very often, but went excellent. And then there's, we'll get into the solar meeting, the basics, some incentives, getting started, member experiences. We have 3 members that will talk about their experiences, and then we'll conclude. But first, one of the things our leadership team wanted to make sure we focus on in our 5-hour meeting was, at first, where are we right now with our emissions? How's it looking for the temperature rise? And on the left side, you can see that it's not pretty. That, you know, a 5-year look at this with these 5 organizations such as NOAA, hitting 1.45 degrees Celsius already. And then on the right side of the screen, you can see the emissions over time here. And you can see that our nationally determined contributions, which is our commitment to the Paris Climate Agreement, needs to do better. Because what we need to do to contain emissions to 1.5 degrees is to reduce emissions for greenhouse gas emissions 43% by 2030. And you can see what it needs to go to achieve close to net zero in the early 2050s. And for a 2 degrees Celsius, you can see that it's a little bit easier, but not too easy, 21% in the next 6 years, et cetera. And you can see the decline there. Now, of the 900 scientists in the IPCC that makes these predictions, about 350 of them have replied to a a survey basically saying that we're kind of off the mark, and it looks more like we're going to be going beyond 2.5 degrees C. So we do have a serious climate crisis right now, and it's really kind of turning into an emergency. So the purpose of this meeting is more important than ever that we understand that. So our vision in the chapter has changed. We envision a world where everyone understands this urgency and severity of the climate crisis, and we know what we can and must do to curb the greenhouse gas emissions, and we're motivated to act the individual, local, state, and national levels and global level to be able to reduce these emissions and make sure everybody knows what they have to do. And our mission has changed to we engage with people and coalitions to forge alliances to advocate for policies, meaningful action to combat climate change. And we recognize that we have seriously escalating climate emergency, and that this challenge requires bold and focused strategies and action plans to transform businesses as usual into a clean and green future. So we just want to make sure that you all are aware of this. And we have what Bruce Mainzer, our co-chair, has coined as our special advocacy, which really says, and Cynthia covered this in the chapter introduction, which was at 5:30. That was a special meeting, but I'll just say it quickly here. The focus is obviously to end fossil fuels. It means we need to stop burning things. When we say burning things, we're talking about gasoline. Stop burning gasoline, stop burning natural gas, which is really methane gas, in our heating systems, in our water heaters, our clothes dryers, things like that. So it's basically electrify everything. Do this on renewable energy, and about half of our energy is provided by nuclear power, which really needs to migrate over with the coal plants migrating all to renewable energy, which is really what we're going to talk about tonight. Develop accountability for fossil fuels. And Jeff Green and Pam Tate have been doing a wonderful job of helping the city of Chicago execute lawsuits And now we're working on the state of Illinois to join with, I think, something like 5 other states in order to be able to develop accountability for these companies that are really kind of getting away with this. And then nature-based solutions to focus on trees and regenerative agriculture. And that would be Karen and Don doing a fantastic job. Our RA coalition is really across the country with a lot of other chapters of CRP and organizations joining in with us. And then the Inform for Action that tries to not only educate, but go beyond education. So with that said, I'll just mention the word electrification. We're really doing the solar thing. We want to be able to do these things on solar. So when we look at electric vehicles, we want to charge them on solar. We don't want to charge them on nuclear power and, coal and natural gas. Same thing with our heating systems. Heat pump HVACs are actually selling more. More of them are being sold in gas heaters now. Heat pump close dryers, heat pump water heaters, and electric induction stoves, all on a foundation of renewable energy in the form of solar and wind. I think Illinois is around 12% on wind, and I think Lisa in a few minutes will talk about where we go from here on solar. I think it's around 2%. So we have a long way to go. It's ramping up quickly, but we're behind now. And so Texas and many other states are kind of way ahead of us on that. So we have a lot of work to do. And what's important about this is that these machines that we're talking about up here, these fossil fuel machines that we're trying to get rid of, a gas-powered car is going to last 12 to 15 years. So we're talking about 2039, 2040. If you were to buy a gasoline car or a hybrid tomorrow, it's going to be burning gas right out to 2040. And I just showed you a minute ago what the aggressive reduction in emissions is necessary just to contain global heating. Same thing with, your water heater goes out tomorrow. What are you going to do? So you kind of plan for that. You kind of anticipate it. You don't have to do it tomorrow, but you by no means want to replace that gas water heater with another one. So that's the foundation for the Electric Pledge. Go to our website for more information. We have a training program out there. We have a pledge that you can sign up for. And so that would be important because, 75% of all of our emissions can be solved with electrification, whether it be renewable energy, such as down the bottom here, or whether these machines, these fossil fuel machines that we use that burn these poisonous products. And 42% of these emissions can be controlled at your kitchen table. And for those that are concerned about having the money to do these things, it's a legitimate concern. But not only do we have tax credits in the form of the IRA, but starting this year, we have rebates that are unbelievable to help low-income families do these things with thousands of dollars in benefits to help move to, say, an induction stove or a heat pump water heater. So just consider that. And we have experts like Chris Murphy that can help you with these tax credits. She knows this inside out. So tonight we'll have Lisa Albrecht speak. In our main presentation, we'll have John Cavalunas, Jay Federman, and myself talking about our member experiences going to solar. And Lisa is owner of Albright Solar, has been in solar since 2007, where she focuses on residential and small commercial installations. As a board member of the Illinois Solar Energy Association, she has worked on the statewide solar tour and advocated in Springfield to help pass FEJA and CEJA. Her focus currently is to streamline permitting in Illinois, reduce soft costs, and speed up construction processes through municipal adoption of solar app, it's called, a national solar permitting standard. So Lisa's a climate reality leader. She was trained in 2012, and we'll welcome Lisa. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Tom. And do I have the ability to advance the slides by myself?
I don't know a way to do it because
Okay.
I'm projecting it. So just say next.
Okay, great.
Unless
Okay.
you could
Thank
tell
you
me
so
how.
much. We're good. Thank you so much, Tom, for that introduction. I appreciate it. We've got a lot of content here. So if people want to, because I know when I'm listening, if I have a question and I don't jot it down, I forget by the end. So if you want to just put your notes in the chat and we could go back and review them because we do have a lot of material. So, but I think we've budgeted enough time to be able to do the presentation, hear from the other presenters, as well as do a quick Q&A. So, excuse me. So for those that don't realize, Illinois has been doing solar since the 70s. And we had a nonprofit here in the state called the Illinois Solar Energy Association. We actually changed the name recently. So we actually have split personality. We have the Illinois Solar Education Association and the Illinois Solar Energy and Storage Association, which is really the trade association that handles the policy stuff. So on the education side, it's really focused primarily on consumer education and advancing solar in communities versus the Energy and Storage Association, which is working in Springfield. So next, please. So a lot of times it's difficult to understand. It's funny, I updated this slide this week. It was 2 years old. The last time that we updated it for 2021, we only had about 450 megawatts of solar installed, and now we're 2,719. So sometimes it might feel as though, gosh, we have a long way to go, and we do, but we have come a long way in a really short amount of time. Illinois is one of the fastest growing states in terms of solar adoption across the country. And one of the things that we're very proud of with the legislation that we passed is that we have solar in every single zip code in the state. So this little map shows where it is by concentration levels. And it's just really exciting to have it in every single zip code in the state, showing that we're able to push policy despite the huge geography that we have and the different climates that we have from top to stern. So that's really exciting. Tom? Again, this is just breaking down, kind of where we've been, what we're doing. Residential, you can see in the dark blue, the tremendous growth that we have had. We passed the legislation in December of 2016. So really 2017. And you can see the impact. The program launched in 2019, and you can see the immediate impact of having strong policy. Without policy, it's really difficult to grow anything, particularly a burgeoning industry like solar. So you can see that adoption has been not catastrophic. What's the word I want? Cataclysmic. It's just record breaking, the pace at which we are growing, not just residential, but also commercial solar, which had a boom in 2020. We've had some supply chain issues. Not sure if folks have been listening to the news, but we've got some tariffs that are coming in place. And so, commercial projects are always going to be very price sensitive. Illinois is one of the leading states in community solar, which we'll get into. And then we also have utility scale, which is the really, really big stuff that none of us participate in, but the utilities do. Tom? So there's a lot of good reasons why people go solar, and it is very personal in many respects. But for the most part, I would say most of the time when people contact me or contact the Illinois Solar Energy Association, they almost always are motivated. It's funny because someone in the household may be motivated by the environment, and someone else in the household may be motivated by the dollars. But at the end of the day, typically the decisions are made because of the dollars, and it's great that they're also getting the environment stuff. So even though half the household might be worried about emissions, or the whole household, it really is a combination. Solar does increase the value of your home. In California, where they have millions of solar systems literally across the state, and their real estate agent, real estate industry has been able to track what kind of impact solar has had on the home sale values. What they have learned is that solar actually increases the value of your home by 4.1%. It is the largest improvement of a home beyond kitchen remodeling a bathroom, or adding a deck. Solar is number one. So that is really exciting. In addition, it also helps homes sell faster, particularly in a down market, because consumers are going to compare house to house, and that house with solar is going to be more affordable to live in the long run. So it does put a finger on the scale. And then you also just have that energy independence of being able to have some control over where your power is coming from on a regular basis. And that's really important in communities like California and Texas, where the grid is quite unstable. We're very blessed here in Illinois that we have a pretty great grid. We complain for sure about ComEd, but when you look across the country, we're doing pretty well with ComEd. There's certainly some improvements we can make, but overall, we've got a good relationship. Next, please. So there's a lot of myths that I always like going into, and we'll dive a little bit. So some of those include, solar panels going to cause a leak on my roof. I've been in this industry since 2007, and I've only had one pretty bad leak, and that was an installer error. And currently I'm working on a project that we've got like a tiny little drip and we just can't seem to find it, but that's out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of systems that I've been a part of since 2007. So the technology that we have to attach the panels is really quite strong. In Illinois, we have your property taxes do not go up because we have legislation to protect your property taxes. So although solar is increasing the value of your home, it does not increase the value of your property taxes. So that is good. We'll tackle some of these other ones as we move forward. So Tom, if you want to, perfect. So one of the biggest myths that we hear is that you can't do solar here. We have winter. The solar panels are going to be covered in snow. That is actually not it, although we do have snow, it does not limit our ability. In fact, we can sometimes outperform some of the southern states because we do have a cooler climate. And like all electronics, we like to perform better in cooler temperatures. And so that's been a really good advantage. So we do get plenty of snow, certainly January, December, February, and November are some of the lower performing months. So the back of the year, but in the summer months, and we'll talk about a program called net metering, you're able to actually bank any extra energy you've produced to use it in future months. So we do have some tools at our disposal to allow you to mitigate issues that we have because of seasonality. Next slide, please. And some of the things that are really interesting is we are in the middle of an energy revolution, and we are witnessing massive change to the scale. Really, I would compare it to when we, moved from horse and buggy to cars. And it's really happening rapidly, which is really exciting because the climate needs us to move. So we're moving away from, that centralized control where you have power plants producing power to individual control where every rooftop and surface that sees the sun has ability to potentially make power. So that's a really exciting change in seeing the electric grid morph into a future state that we desperately need on the planet. Next, please. A lot of times people say solar is too hard. In reality, it's a very passive technology. So we put the panels up on the roof and the sun actually excites the electrons. There's micro wiring within the panel that captures that power. And we go down, it's creating DC current. So we need to go into what's called an inverter. Sometimes that inverter is under the panel called a micro inverter. Sometimes it's a central inverter that's located down near the rest of your electrical equipment, but it turns that power from DC to AC so that it's usable within your house. That device also becomes a monitoring system. So it will tattle if your system's not performing well. So you can make any kind of adjustments. We're putting a silent device on your roof. There's no moving parts to tell you when it's broken. So the monitoring is very advanced to be able to tell you, hey, you need a service call. It's pretty rare to have one, but most of the time it's telling you, how much power you've produced, which is super exciting on when we have nice sunny days. As we're currently moving into summer solstice, it's exciting seeing your power output increase every single day. From there, the inverter just plugs right into the electric panel, which really becomes the traffic cop. Sometimes we will hook into your meter, depending on, there's a few different ways we can interconnect depending on your home and situation and what's going to be best for you electrically. And then anytime you have a device that's calling for a load, it will either come directly from the solar. Sorry, I'm being attacked by a cat. You'll either be powered by the sun and the energy that you're creating right on your own roof, or it will come in from the grid if you're not producing enough power. So in the winter, you'll probably grab more from the utility, but in the summer, you'll grab more from your solar. Your electric meter is really interesting. And in ComEd territory, we have what's called bi-directional meters that have two channels. Channel 1 traditionally will measure the power coming to you from the grid, but channel 2, very excitingly, will measure power that you're sending back to the grid. So you have become a micro utility and you are now sending your power to ComEd, which is really exciting to be able to be part of that electrification of the grid. So we'll get into net metering in just a little bit, but that's how that happens, is through your utility meter. Next, please. So the process to go solar, this is the question that I think as Climate Reality, we get the most often from folks. How do I do it? It seems cryptic, it seems difficult, but in reality, there's just a few simple steps, and it's not that different from doing a bathroom remodel or anything else, right? So you're gonna do your homework, you're gonna figure out kind of what you need and what you want, and we'll go into that in more detail. And then you're going to start and court a few players. I always suggest that people, go out there and get a couple of bids. You want to see what people are saying to you. You want to see if you are a good fit. The solar panels have a 25-year warranty. So this is a relationship that is not just during the install, but hopefully if you've got a good installer, this is a relationship for a long time that you're going to have. So finding someone that you trust, finding somebody who knows what they're doing, who has a track record, who's done this in Illinois, who'll be able to give you the assistance that you need is really key. So having dating people for a little while, and then finally you decide which contractor you want. There's a lot of paperwork. I'll say, although the Future Energy Jobs Act and the Clean Energy Jobs Act did a great job of bringing us incentives, they brought a lot of bureaucracy too. So get a pen with a lot of ink in it, because you're going to have a lot of things to sign along the way. Once you've set up with a single contractor, they'll probably come out, do a technical visit, look at your electric panel, look at your meter, crawl around in your attic, get some measurements, and apply for your permit. Every municipality has slightly different requirements, slightly different process. So your installer will be the expert at that. They'll submit that permit, and typically a permit approval is somewhere between, some municipalities are pretty quick. They can get you that in 5 days. Some will take a little bit longer. They will require that a structural engineer looks to make sure that the panels are going to be fine for your roof. And so that's one of the reasons why they'll go up in your attic and take those measurements, is they just want to make sure that the building is stable. Typically a solar panel is only going to add about 3 pounds per square foot on a pitched roof. That can be 5 to 7 pounds on a flat roof, because essentially we're building an erector set that we need. There's various techniques on how that's going to get installed and secured to the roof. So it's a little bit of a different detail. Once you've got that permit in hand, then it's a matter of getting materials on site and mobilizing the crew to get out there. Right now, this is probably a busy time. Usually that can happen in about 2 weeks. There's a lot of activity right now as we start moving into the summer months. So that might take an installer a little bit longer, depending on the backlog of projects that they have. The installation part is the easiest part. Most homes are going to take a day, maybe 2 days to install for a residential project. If you've got, several different pitches and different locations and subarrays on your roof, it could take a little bit longer. If you've got, kind of a difficult conduit run, that could be a little bit longer. But typically speaking, the easy part is the install. It's all the paperwork up front. Once the work is done, they'll call for an inspection. That can take anywhere from a couple of days to get scheduled, or if you're in the city of Chicago, it can. I just had a project we finished install on February 27th, and we're inspecting it tomorrow. So it just depends on the municipality and what that timeline is going to be. So add it all together, typically from the point that you sign a contract with an installer, it's going to take somewhere between 3 to 4 months to get your system installed. Next time. I mentioned doing your homework. There's a lot of great resources. So the Illinois Solar Energy Association has something called Find a Professional Tool. You're able to go in and look to see who are the installers that are working in your area. These are business members that we have. We're not Illinois Solar is not necessarily endorsing them, but they are participants in the Illinois Solar market. So it's a great resource, and sometimes a little bit better than going out to say just Google search someone. We do screen out the state incentive program does kick people out of the ability to participate, and so the bad actors get screened out, and so none of those bad actors are on the Illinois Solar Energy's website. Whereas you could find them on accident if you end up just doing a Google search. So I always recommend looking at the ICEA Find a Professional site for that. And then there's a lot of FAQ information about homeowners that homeowners might want to look at. There's a calculator that you can play with to see kind of how much solar you might need. And so there's a lot of good stuff on that page. Next, please. Like I mentioned, the next thing about making sure that you're looking out for bad actors like plumbing, roofers, electricians. There's some folks out there, particularly because our state incentives are very valuable. There's a lot of folks in the market. Unfortunately, there's a lot of folks that grew really rapidly and either didn't do a good job or left the state and have gone out of business. So there's a lot of volatility. Do Google search, look to see if anybody's in trouble with the BBB, look to see what consumer complaints there are, look on on Facebook, there's a lot of places. But the state agency is called Illinois Shines that runs the state incentive, and they do have a and I apologize, I should have put the link here and not hot marked that, but the Illinois Shines has Find a Designee, and those are it's a list of everybody, and you can see who the good actors are and who the bad actors are. Or at least you can see who you don't want to work with because they won't be able to help you get your state incentive. Next tab, please. Next thing to do that I always recommend to folks is look at your house on satellite. A lot of us haven't. If you can't see your roof on satellite, the sun can't either. So look in there. This is from Google Project Sunroof, and it does color code your irradiance, or the amount of sunlight that's hitting your roof. And so it is aware of how tall trees are in your neighborhood, if there is another building that's taller than you. And you can see in the bottom right corner, there's a scale. So dark purple is bad, bright yellow or almost white is good. And so you'll be able to see your home on that scale. One of the things this tool, it's really a broad brush. It doesn't necessarily see bathroom vents or figure out that there's skylights or that you have some dormers or anything up there. So it's a rather broad brush, but I do like the fact that it color codes to give you an idea. Kind of what your roof looks like. I wouldn't be too afraid if you start moving into the darker orange or the darker yellow or the orange areas. You can still talk to some installers, and the ethical ones will tell you whether solar is a good fit for you or not. Pricing has come down very far. So a lot of people's shade tolerance has improved because it still is, some solar on your roof is better than zero solar on your roof. So next slide, please. The next thing we want to do is look at your electric bill. I think most of us just look to see what the dollar amount is that we need to pay, but we don't necessarily look at our usage. So the ComEd bills, even the new ones that just got released last month, on the left-hand side, it gives you a 13-month history showing how many kilowatt hours you've used on average, and even graphs that out. So you can see, understandably, your usage would, and this, the one in this example is from April to April. So that's why it's spiking. And it seems like it might be a little off, but that's because the calendar's a little skewed here. But you do see the actual numbers, which is really useful. When we're looking at designing solar, the roof will tell you the most you can do. Your electrical bill will tell you the most you need. So having that piece of information is really important so that you can make sure that you understand how much solar you're looking to buy. I have had many situations, certainly outside of the city of Chicago, because Chicago itself, our roofs tend to be smaller. And so getting to 100% or greater than 100% can be a little bit harder than it is in the suburbs. But looking at your roof tells us the most we can get up there. Looking at your electric bill tells us the most that you need. Next slide. And then you also need to kind of think about, gosh, is this what I'm doing forever? You know, kind of like Tom has done and several other people who will speak later, you know, am I going to add an electric vehicle? On average, that may add about 3,000 kilowatt hours per month. If you're adding a heat pump, it depends on the size of your house and the number of people that live there, but you could add 5 to 10,000 kilowatt hours per year. Sorry, geothermal is quite similar as well, can be a little bit higher. I forgot to put that number in there. Electric water heater, somewhere around 500 kilowatt hours, electric cooking, electric dryer, you know, so thinking about, okay, what are my loads now? Because expanding your system can be tricky. It isn't electronically, but it is when it comes to incentives. So we'll talk about that in a bit. Next. A lot of people have never really kind of looked at the roof. The number one thing you want to do is, what's the age of my roof? If you go outside and take a look, if the shingles are smiling back at you, they're not in good shape. They're curling up on the edges. That's because they're dried out and they're not necessarily healthy shingles anymore. So you definitely want to put solar on a healthy roof. If you need to roof, all the solar has to come off. And so I always recommend going with a roof that's no older than 5 years, because the panels are going to be up there for 25. So you want to make sure that you don't have any added expense. About half the cost of solar is labor. And so you'd have to pay that twice if you're putting solar panels up on a bad roof. Are there any structural concerns? One of the things that they'll look for is load bearing walls and things like that. What does the shade look like in my yard? You and I see, we see light as ambient, but the solar panel is really looking for that direct ray. We want the sun to actually strike that surface of that panel. A lot of people say, well, I'm not too worried about my trees, I'll lose leaves, but branch shading is a problem. So really kind of looking at your roof, looking at those tools that I presented earlier, to kind of see, you know, how much actual light is hitting my roof. Looking at your electric panel, most people have a 200 amp panel. If you look at it at the big bar at the top, will tell you, is it full? Is it not full? You can pass some of those things on to the folks that are looking at your system to move on. Some municipalities will use a solar permit as a great opportunity to improve the other conditions in your house, such as your grounding system and whether or not you have smoke detectors, modern smoke detectors. Next, please. And then lastly is just budget. So I mentioned there's 3 variables that we look at when we're designing solar. First is looking at the roof. How much can I fit? Second is your electric bill. How much do I need? And third is, how much do I want to spend? This is just an example of a system. Solar right now is roughly about $3 a watt, depending on the complexity of the project. Flat roofs are a little bit more expensive because there's a lot more roofing that's involved. But here's some numbers. This was a house that I modeled last week. Just to stay current, you can see that their south-facing roofs are great because they do anticipate a little bit of a higher electric load. We were thinking about maybe installing panels to the left. This is a new construction, so we're putting panels on that orange triangle to the left is their garage. So you can see in this next section, there are the incentives, and we'll go through some of these in greater detail, but solar does get a 30% tax credit. That is taken the year you energize your system. You can defer it for 5 years, or you can even split it up depending on your tax equity. The state of Illinois also offers an incentive, which we will go into. It's a bit wonky and a little complicated, but that can also be somewhere between 30 to 35% of your total project cost as well. So that really gets you down to about, typically about 40% of the total install price is what you're out of pocket. We'll talk about some of these other things in a bit, but if you go down to about the middle of the page where it's blue and it says estimated 25-year energy output, this is my favorite part. So if you think of yourself as a micro utility, you're buying energy or you're buying a power plant that you're putting on your roof. And so as any other investment, if you were buying any other kind of a factory, you would want to know, like, what's the potential output of my investment? We can't just take your your forecasted energy output times 25 years, because solar panels will degrade over time. So using that degradation factor in this situation, if I'm just focusing on the first column, which is 26 panels, this array is going to make about 310,000 kilowatt hours of power per year. If I take that number, if I take the price after incentives, so the 8,700 after what you've paid out of pocket, and divide it by how many kilowatt hours you'd be making over time, this factory will be making a kilowatt hour at 2.8 cents per kilowatt hour. ComEd is charging you 15 cents. I looked at a new bill today. So you're making your power for fractions of what ComEd is charging you. So either you can rent your power from ComEd or you can own it. Now it is an investment, and it's not necessarily that everybody has $10,000, $15,000 sitting around. But when you do look at your fixed price of energy over time, that is never going to go up. So it's the price that you paid out of pocket divided by the amount of energy that you're going to generate over that lifetime of that system. Next slide, Tom. The rest of the slides are a little bit quicker. The next thing you're going to look at is you've got a few options for how you're going to pay for your system. In my experience, most people pay cash, but that's just how my business is set up. If you pay for your system up front, you are going to have, maximize your savings, just like anything. If you rent your car, own your car, the greater value is going to be if through ownership. Some people, I've had school teachers who it's been their life dream to own solar panels. And so they have had their own savings account just for their solar. And as soon as they have the money in the pocket, they went ahead and just paid cash outright. Some people do get loans. They can either get a home equity loan or just go directly to their bank, usually their mortgage provider, to get that kind of funding. There are specific solar companies. For example, there's a company called Mosaic that does offer solar loans. And what they do is they'll give you, they'll split that loan up to help you pay off very quickly once you take those incentives. So when you get your state incentive back and you get your tax credit back, you can pay that loan back very, very quickly. And then at that point, you're just paying off a smaller portion, which is typically less than the cost of your electricity bill. Next, please. Another financing option is either power purchase agreement, a PPA, or solar lease. Some people probably have bumped into some of these companies at, say, the Home Depot or Best Buy. They are big national players. Sunrun and SunPower are the two largest. And it's great if you don't necessarily have the cash in hand to pay for the system. My own cousin had wanted to put solar panels on her roof. She was really nervous about the cash outlay. She lives in Boston, and she was sending 2 kids to college, and they were really smart kids, so they were going to be expensive colleges and not a lot of help. So for her, the best decision was to go with a power purchase agreement. So she signed an agreement with Sunrun, so you don't have to put anything down. I think probably most people have been inundated with ads on Facebook. Get solar for free. It's not really for free, but it is for $0 down, because you don't actually own the array. The company owns the array, and you're buying back the power over time. So it's a little bit of a different scenario. Next, please. All right, so diving into the incentives, we'll start with the right. I don't know why I have these back to front, but the stuff on the right is the easiest. So the federal government offers a 30% tax credit. This was supposed to disappear, but one of the greatest achievements of the Inflation Reduction Act that the Biden administration passed last year is extending the federal tax credit through 2032. This has been something that we have, as an industry, have lived on the cliff. It was always going to expire in 2 years or 3 years, and we just never had a long runway. So it's nice to be able to tell people, okay, you don't have to make this decision in the next 5 minutes, because this incentive is sticking around. So it's really exciting. If you install solar, later on, the percentage amount will go down, and then any system that goes in after 2035 will be zero. But it's hard to say how cheap solar will be by that time. The state incentive is is a bit wonky. And although it's one of the most lucrative systems in the country, it's probably among the most complicated as well. So again, if you think of yourself as a micro utility, you are producing clean power where ComEd and the public utilities are producing dirty power. The state of Illinois requires that all utilities must invest in solar, and they do that through paying you for the clean attributes of your array. So they're not buying the kilowatt hours, but they're buying the fact that your power does not pollute. So that's called a renewable energy credit. And every 1,000 kilowatt hours that your system produces makes one renewable energy credit that you will then sell back to the state. It's not actually tax dollars. These are utility dollars. So ComEd is required to create a fund. And actually, if you look at your electric bill, we're all paying into that fund. But this fund is set aside to help pay for those investments. It is a 15-year contract. The average home is only owned for about 10 years. So it does mean that at some point this will need to be transferred if you were to sell your house, but it is a very lucrative system. For systems that are residential or that are under 25 kilowatts, it's a check that is paid as soon as your system is energized. For larger systems than that, it's paid quarterly or monthly over a 6-year period. So it's a little bit different for commercial projects than it is for residential projects, but it is cash in your pocket. If you sell your house, the new person needs to take over that contract, and we won't get into the weeds on that. But it is, so the state recognizes that your system will be contributing to clean power for a long time. And so it is a 15-year program. Most states only offer 3 to 4 years. I kind of wish we were 5. 15 is a long time. Because it does get a little bit complicated, but it is a very beneficial and lucrative investment that the state is making on behalf of the utilities in individual homes. Next, please. So this is just another graphic. It says homeowners install, systems make clean power, and the Illinois Power Agency, who runs the program, it's called Illinois Shines, will work with a third-party vendor to be able to make sure that your system is getting recognized and compensated for the fact that you are avoiding dirty energy on the grid, and that ComEd does not need to buy dirty power on your behalf. Next one. So the state program starts every June 1st. We're in the process of moving into new pricing. Right now, all new projects are going on to a wait list. We are in Group B, that's all ComEd projects and systems that are under 10 kilowatts. They are valued at $83.87. That's a 12-cent increase from last year versus folks that were in Group A, that is more southern Illinois. Their RECs are less valuable. ComEd, we're not building as fast as we should be in this region, so they've increased the price just slightly. Next, please. So another incentive that is incredibly valuable, and people may have heard that this is blowing up some other states, particularly California, is net metering. We currently have one of the best net metering programs in the country, but it is set to go away if your system needs to be energized by December 31st, 2024. Beginning in 2025, we'll have something quite different. But essentially how net metering works is you're making power. Some of that goes into your house. Some of that goes back to the grid. Anything that goes back to the grid is credited on your electric bill. Next slide, please. So the challenge that brings is that you are typically making power, the blue grid, so the sun gets up in the morning, it peaks at noon, and then it sets in the afternoon, but your usage is a little bit different than that. So usually, you get up in the morning, people are showering, you're making coffee, you're doing your things. So your electricity usage actually goes up in the morning. It drops as people are going to school. And then, this is actually not hourly, but monthly. So you can see your power usage is increasing, in the summer. And so these two things are not in sync. Next slide, please. And so we have, a lot of places where we have some challenges. But that's one of the most important parts about net metering is it helps to kind of, smooth some of those differences out. Battery storage can also help because you're able to better serve your needs based on how much, but we won't get into batteries today. Next slide, please. So what does it look like? What does net metering look like on your electric bill? So the section in the middle with the tan highlight, you'll see there's 2 line items under the meter information. Everyone currently has a line that says KW from grid. That's the amount of power you're taking from ComEd. But as a solar producer, someone who owns solar and has it on their own roof, there's a new line item that tracks the kilowatt hours to grid. Your meter actually has 2 channels, one that measures power in, one that measures power out, and your electric bill will reflect that. If you're in a co-op or a municipal electric market, you probably don't see this level of detail, but the ComEd bills are excellent because we can really see exactly what's happening. And then under the supply, delivery, and taxes and fees sections, you'll see highlighted in red there that you get what's called a net metering credit. Currently, that is a 1-for-1 credit. So if you add up all the variable rates, everything that's a KWH, you're getting that exact dollar amount. So you are getting credited exactly what ComEd is charging you. So you're getting the full, it's called full retail net metering value. Next slide. And you could see just here the highlighted sections where those credits are applied. Now, that is not your total energy savings, because don't forget, you are making power on your roof that you use real time. ComEd does not know how much solar you made. It only knows what excess you sent back to the grid. So your total energy savings is a combination of what you made and used and what you sent back to the grid. Next slide, please. Just breaking that down, if you have hourly pricing, some people do hourly pricing where they have a variable rate for their power. It works a little bit differently. You're credited dollars at the same rate that ComEd charges you. So if you're making power and pushing it to the grid during peak hours, you're getting paid peak rates. And so you're actually, instead of, I'm sorry, I missed something. Tom, could you go back one? The one thing I didn't talk about is rollovers. So in ComEd territory, and actually all utilities in Illinois, if you make more power than you consume, as you can see, this consumer took 389 kilowatt hours from the grid. They sent back 695, so they sent back more than they used. And you can see under miscellaneous, they actually have a rollover. Or if you think of it, it works just like cell phone rollovers, where anything that is accumulated, and you can roll that power from month to month. You just can't roll that from year to year. Sorry, didn't mean to skip that part. I'm looking at the clock. Next, please. If you're hourly, it's a little bit different. So you're not rolling power over from hours to hours, but you're rolling dollars. So it's just a little bit different. ComEd does reset everybody in April, which is a little bit frustrating because we just had a really good solar production month in March of 2024. So I had a lot of people complaining, hey, how come I got zero? Everybody forgets that there's a true up period. It's either April or October. It makes more sense to do it in April when we're coming off the dark days of winter and you probably don't have much of a rollover accumulated. Next slide, please. And so this is again going back to the hourly pricing. You can see that they are getting credits that then roll. So this consumer had a $0 bill. So that is actually helping to pay for the customer charge, the standard metering charge, and any other costs that might not have been tied to the solar. Next, please. So let's say you looked on satellite and you have a terrible roof. There's a high rise across the street to the south of you, and you just don't see the sun ever. Or perhaps you are renting and you don't own your home. Or you're in a multifamily building, a condo or an apartment building, and you just can't put solar on your roof. You do have an option in Illinois, and that's called community solar. And that is where you're actually investing or you're taking part of a large solar array based on how much energy you need or how much energy you want. So instead of your power coming from dirty fossil fuels, you're actually saying, okay, I want my power to come from a solar field. Those solar fields are here in Illinois. the community solar that ComEd participates in is in their geographic region, and in Ameren, it's in their geographic region. So these are local dollars, which is great because these big solar arrays are creating tax basis that often goes to schools and road improvements and other things in those communities. So, so it's, there's so many wins that come to community solar. Next slide, please. So what is community solar? So it's actually a subscription-based opportunity to choose where your power comes from. You sign up with the owners of those arrays, a third-party power entity, and then you get credits back on your electric bill. Most people are going to save 10 to 20%. You don't save a ton when you're going with community solar, but you do get that environmental benefit of knowing that your power is coming from clean resources and it's not from that crappy coal plant in Southern Illinois that we all hate. That dumb Prairie State piece of garbage. Sorry, did I say that out loud? In Illinois, we're really lucky. Both businesses and homeowners are allowed to participate in community solar. No single entity, like say, for example, IKEA, for example, can't use all the power off of a community solar project. So no individual entity is allowed to take more than 40%, which is good because that means that there's space for the rest of us. When we first started looking at community solar in the state, we were like, wait a second, we want to make sure that we're serving all markets. And not just helping businesses save on their electric bill and getting the bragging rights of clean power, but making sure that somebody who is renting an apartment, somebody who owns their own house, but they have an amazing, beautiful tree canopy, they're able to choose their clean resources. Next slide, please. What is it not? So there was also a lot of confusion. So there are community group purchasing programs. Some of you may have seen something called Solarize. There's a few in the area that may say, okay, and the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, which is based out of Custer, Wisconsin, they participate down in Illinois. And what they'll do is a group buy. And so if you are, for example, I think like Wilmette, Winnetka, Skokie, Glenview, like a cluster of cities did a group buy a few years ago where if you participate, the solar installer is able to combine you all, which increases their purchasing power for the panels and the rest of the equipment, and then they pass those savings on to consumers. So there are some group buys. I don't know if there's any right now. I know there's some certainly like in the Carbondale area right now in Illinois, but it comes and goes, and it's something that you can kind of snoop around and look for. It's not utility scale. Utility scale projects, although they are big fields full of panels, they typically are very large arrays, and they're selling their power directly to the utility. And it's not to be confused with, I think many people may have remembered or maybe even got burnt a little bit on municipal aggregation. There was a process around 2015 to 2018 where municipalities, ComEd had a really bad power deal. And so people were paying a lot of power, and there were folks that came into the state at cheaper prices. And so a lot of municipalities went out and purchased cheaper contracts with people. So community solar is not that. That's kind of, a lot of that's died, or at least died down a little bit. Because some of those players turned out to be bad actors, and they jacked up the prices after ComEd got a better contract and was able to come in at lower prices. Next slide. So community solar billing can be a little bit complicated. You'll still get your utility bill, and you'll get a bill from the entity that you sign up with. So that can be a little bit confusing. Essentially, on your ComEd bill, you'll see a credit because you have bought your power from someone else, but then you're going to get the bill for that power. And that bill will be typically 10 to 20% cheaper than had you just been with the utility. And again, you're getting clean energy. Next slide. So just a quick example, like I said, so let's say you use about 1,000 kilowatt hours of power, you've subscribed for about 950. So you'll get a 50 kilowatt hour bill from ComEd. The 950 would be from that separate entity. So again, you'll have two bills. My parents do it. And it's a little bit confusing sometimes for them because there are some goofy instances sometimes, and often if there's trouble, it may have been caused by ComEd and some complications. I think for community solar folks who, so ComEd just changed all of their bills. So if you are in community solar, you may notice or not that you're not getting your bills from your community solar provider right now. This is a little known surprise. And so we're worried that people are going to end up getting a huge bill because of all the back billing. Because when ComEd launched the new bill formats, it did not do it correctly for community solar. So if you've got a community solar subscription, sock a little money away in your budget because you're going to get a big bill later. Next slide, please. This is just another example. So you can see without community solar, the consumer would have paid on the supply side for the power itself about $56, delivery taxes and fees. You add all that up at about $109. Once you sign up for community solar, you do get a ComEd bill, and you can see you get that negative, you get a credit because your power is coming from another resource. So your bill with ComEd is only $59, and then your bill with your community solar provider is $40. So in this instance, the consumer saved $10. So about 10%. Next slide, please. This is just another example of what that same scenario would look like, where you're getting the big credit under the supply section. And so in this case, their bill was $0. Next slide, please. Just more of the same. Sorry, I don't know why I have so many examples of this. Next slide, please. Another bill. So this is that community solar provider. This is just an example of their bill. So they're billing specifically for your the subscribed portion of power that's coming through. So in this case, this consumer was paying $13.18 for their power. Next slide. In Illinois, we also, when we passed the Future Energy Jobs Act, and then also really reinforced it when we passed the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, we wanted to make sure that we were not just having solar for the wealthy, and created something called the Low Income Program, or Solar for All. And so there are some requirements for how you qualify for that type of program. You have some income minimums. So folks that are below poverty level can get some additional assistance to make sure that solar is very available. It is kind of challenging because often if you are in that income bracket and you own your own home, you may not have a good conditioned roof, or your electricity may need some improvements. And so there've been some additional programs that are rolling out to help folks in that type of situation. But the people who are the most impacted by their electric bill are the people who are least able to pay for it. So making sure that was part of our vision and goal. And then the other piece that was really interesting in the Solar for All program is making sure that we had job training. We can only grow as fast as we have jobs. And so making sure that folks have an opportunity to join this movement in terms of career paths. And so those have not yet launched, even though the legislation passed in 2017. It's really a difficult process to get those up and running, but we anticipate some of these job hubs should be opening and starting to roll out. Next slide. So again, if you, if you're looking to go solar, certainly check out the Illinois Solar Energy Association website. We do have individual memberships, which is interesting. You can either, so folks, the average person can become a member of the Illinois Solar Education Association. I think it's a $45 fee. And we do a lot of fun events. We also have a lot of educational sessions, and Jay Fetterman is actually part of that solar education. Next slide. And that is it for me.
Okay, thank you. Jay, want to tell us about your system, please?
Sure. Well, thank you. So my system, I started my journey to solar in 2016 when we had a whole different system in Illinois. But at that time, my average monthly use of electricity was 400 kilowatt hours per month. And so I wound up getting 16 panels that were 285 watts apiece, which was pretty good back in that day. They've come a long way since then. But I sized that to cover my use throughout the year, taking advantage of net metering. And my upfront cost for that was $14,700. And we had a 30% federal tax credit at that time, like we do now, which cut my costs down to about $10,000. And then in Illinois, we had a slightly different rec program at that time, but it still covered another $4,200. So it brought my net cost of the whole system down to $6,000. And that was going to cover, 25 to 30 years of my electricity use. And then I bought an electric car. So I was buying electricity from the utility again and needed to put up some more panels. So just in the ensuing 2 years since my first system, the panels had advanced a lot, and they were now available at 360 watts each, and they're even more efficient now. But that was similar costs, similar tax credit, and similar renewable energy credit. And again, for about $6,000, that essentially was going to cover my gas for my electric car for the next 30 years. So people talk about, well, what's the payoff period on your investment and all that. And I say for anybody in Illinois, there's always an opportunity to go solar, whether it's on your roof or community solar, and any way you go is going to save you money. By not going solar, you're choosing to pay more money for polluting energy. My payoff, I think it's probably about 8 years based on, the numbers I've run, but it's kind of confusing because I've electrified more and more of my appliances in my house. So it's hard to say. But I have a friend in town here who's a big energy user, has a beautiful southern exposure. The quotes he were getting, and he's going to go solar, he's going to be having his system essentially paid off in 4 years. So, that's essentially basically 20% return on investment, which you're not going to get anywhere. And it's pretty much a sure thing as long as the sun comes up. So we're all here ostensibly for the environmental aspects, but there's a screaming good case to be made for the financial benefits of solar at this point. I've got some pictures of my installation, if you want to advance, Tom. I think it took a day or two for the first one. This is some of the workers putting up what we call the racking system. This is just a system of rails that attaches to the roof to secure the panels in place. The fit slips under the shingles, and there's flashing, and my roof doesn't leak. It's not an issue. Next slide, please. And then they had this little contraption that they would use to shuttle the panels up to the roof. You can see kind of the size they are in comparison to the man up there. They don't weigh a lot. They're actually really thin. They were in a box in my garage before they were put up there, so I got to kind of check them out. Next slide, please. And this is what my systems look like. The top left one is my original system, and the bottom left one is the second system. The top left one has a separate inverter, which is the thing on the right that's just attached to the outside of my house. The second system has micro inverters. Honestly, I couldn't tell you that they do anything differently. There's a smaller box outside my house associated with the second system. They both sit up there. They both work. They're seen by my neighbors, and my neighbors ask me about solar, and I've had a lot of people I know who've gone solar, I think because of my example. And once you get it up there, you're going to want to tell people about it. And that's the great thing, because it kind of spreads like mushrooms. You'll see neighborhoods, one person has solar, pretty soon 3 or 4 of their neighbors have solar. And then, you can take it beyond your home. I've gone to my school board and nagged them about solar because, it's the right thing to do for the kids, but it's also the right thing to do for the budget for the schools. So our school system now, all new construction projects are going to incorporate solar. And I think that's all the slides I have.
John, why don't you go ahead?
Thanks, Tom. My scenario isn't dramatically different from Jay in that I needed more as I electrified. So those are my panels on the south-facing roof right now, and that was in 2016. And those panels, I didn't notice them, didn't put it down there, but they were the 285 watt panels, same as Jay's on the initial install. I paid extra to get full black, as opposed to with the lines. It was $1,000, I think, total I paid for those. My 19 panels did not give me the estimated production that the installer had. And I tracked them just with a spreadsheet. I'm not fancy like Tom's. You wait to see Tom's. It's like, whoa, I'm not like that. But I was tracking production. So he added 3 panels 2 years in, no charge due to the production shortfall that I had. Because my production originally was estimated to about match my usage of around 7,000 kilowatts. And my actual production from that array was at 6,000. So he added to boost it, but I still was a little bit under. But my motivation on all this was never financial. It was environmental. And I basically felt as long as I wasn't getting gypped or making a bad investment, I wanted to go solar. It was just, that's what needed to be done. In 2016, I went to an ISEA coffee clutch, if you will, in the neighborhood from a couple members, and just went through a lot of the things that Lisa had just put up that I knew nothing about at the time, and to try to just understand this scenario. Next one, Tom. So here we are. I now am in CRP, and I said, oh boy, there's a lot of things I wasn't thinking about in the future. And so EV, heat pump, for my HVAC, as well as the hot water heater that got installed a month ago. So now my usage has virtually doubled from about 7,000 kilowatt hours to 14,000 kilowatt hours. And I'm now saying, no, that's way, too much on fossil fuels now in my current setup. And so I'm evaluating the on the roof or community solar. As Lisa went through, you can see the reduction in system cost. Back in 2016, it was like $4.11 a watt, and now you're $3 to $3.20 a watt. So there's definitely a reduction in cost, and it's as technology has improved, I presume volume is also part of that equation too, without knowing exactly. Community solar, one I looked at was a 20% discount, and I think it was Clearway. I just went to a Cub matrix of what community solar people had, and I picked Clearway just to talk to them. There's no long-term commitment. You can drop it anytime. The only thing that I have some reservations there is I'm on hourly pricing now and taking the benefit of selling when the sun is high and using at 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. when my EV charges at night. So I'm getting the benefit. When you go in that community solar scenario, I'm not sure the 20% would hold. I actually think it would be a little less because I'm not sure I would get the net cost. And honestly, talking to ComEd or Clearway, they weren't exactly sure. And if you go on community solar, said there's nothing wrong with trying it because you can drop it really at any time. I guess that's about it. I would just say that the EV did not put the big bump on my usage. The big bump was the HVAC. That made a major change in my usage pattern. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, John. In the last 5 minutes, I'll go through my system, and if we have questions, be sure to put them in the chat. We'll get back to you. If we don't get them tonight, we'll definitely get back to you offline. So my system was installed right at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. This is my house. The house faces east. The panels are in the front of the house and the back of the house. So as the sun comes up, they hit the front panels. The sun goes over the top, hitting both the front and back panels. And then as the sun sets in the back right over here, the back gets most of the power. We have 2 EVs, so it powers the whole thing. So we have 27 panels. They're 400 watt panels. With microinverters, so if a panel goes down, all the other panels will keep going because each panel has a microinverter. It's 10,800 kilowatts. the 4-year production was projected to be about 50,000 kilowatts. And the 4-year consumption, we've had them up for 4 years, has been 49,353. So our coverage has been 101% as of a couple of days ago when I did this. So that means our panels are covering everything, our cars and our house. That doesn't mean every month it's that way, but it means we're really producing well. The production guarantee is 25 years. And as Lisa said, they will deteriorate a little, but they're guaranteed for 90%, which is pretty good. 100% warranty. The SolarX we got that Lisa talked about was 169. We were paid $72.97 for each rec, or about $12,332 from the state of Illinois. And then, of course, I think it was a 30% tax credit from the federal government as well. So the payback for us is about 8 years projected, but it will actually be a little bit less because we're overproducing what was originally planned. So I want to show you each month real quick. Every time you see blue, that's me taking power from the grid. Every time you see orange, that's me getting power from my roof. So you can see in the month of January, 12% of power came from my roof. Why is that? It's cloudy, the days are short, and there was snow over the panels a whole lot. You have to expect this with in the state of Illinois. But as you see February, you can see a big difference. We're now up to 89% coverage. Look at all the orange, and when the blue lines go below the line, that means I'm selling it back to in my case, I'm in Naperville, so it's a muni. It's not ComEd. I'm selling it back to the muni. I'm still buying more power, but I'm getting 89% though off the roof. Now, as we move into March, now I'm at 113% of demand now. That means I'm selling more, I'm making more than I'm using. So you can see a huge amount. So you can see in the case of right here, this day, all of this production, 37 kilowatt hours, all this production went up and it was more than I needed. So I sold the rest back. That's what the line going down is. So you can kind of see how that profile worked. Now in April looks like this. Now I'm 147%. You can see the days are getting longer. There isn't any snow in April, okay? And there's more sun. So you can see how productive the thing starts to get. And all these blue lines below the line is my meter running backwards, selling power back to the utility, which is great. Now, May so far, I mean, it's not over, right? It's doing well, 196% coverage, looks very well, but it's not done yet. So I went back a year, and this is May 2023. We're at 187% for the month. We expect June and July to be extremely good as well. So that's how it's worked. And to summarize our 4 years, the projection is $5,000 in savings over 4 years. However, there are fees that we didn't really spend much time about, but there's a lot of fees that you get charged, whether you buy from the utility or whether you buy or have a solar array. So it's probably about $4,000, about $1,000 a year to power 2 vehicles in our home. 101 projection over 4 years. The projection was 96%, but our actual was 101%, equivalent to about 39 tons of emissions saved, or 85,900 pounds, equivalent to 22,000 miles not driven every year, or 87,000 miles, equivalent to 3,965 gallons of gasoline not used, equivalent to 587 trees, full-grown trees, not planted, but equivalent to that, okay? So 39 tons, a ton is about as big as a house, a 2-story house, as you can imagine. So that's basically it. We'll summarize by saying solar dominates most new energy added to the grid. It reduces pollution and emissions immediately when it's turned on. It sidesteps nuclear and fossil fuels. It retains grid connectivity, so you always have sustainable power, even in January. Net metering sells excess clean power back to the grid, reduces grid energy stress and loads, saves family money, and is the foundation for home and transportation electrification. And I'm reminding you of these pictures. This is where we want to go, right? We can save 75% of emissions by going electric and going to green energy. That's really about it. I want to thank you very much. There's these links. We'll get you these slides and a link to the video. And if you have any questions, please put it in the chat. We're out of time, but if there's any quick questions, you can pop them in the chat or people can stay and we'll try and answer them.
And I did address any question that was in the chat. I've answered them.
Oh, cool.
Within-
You have? Okay.
Already complete.
Anything else offhand? Go solar.
Go solar. There's not a
Plan
better
for it,
time
though.
than right
Go
now.
solar.
In fact, don't forget that net metering is going to change next year. And so your savings will be about half of what they are today.
Really? That's unacceptable. I'm in Naperville. Is that true of Naperville too?
No, because you're part of a municipal. Yeah. So you're.
Just the rest of
you're-
us.
ComEd.
It's anybody who has a ComEd bill versus a. public
Robin, did
utility.
you have a question?
No, I was just saying
Oh,
it's kind of
okay.
a bummer because of ComEd. And the only other comment I will make is the reporting system that we have. I look at that many, many times in a month because it's so exciting to see how much carbon you're not putting into CO2 you're not putting in the air and how much you're saving by doing that. So it's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Go solar. Yeah, you can't.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.
Thank
And
you.
Thanks, Elisa, for
Bye.
your
Thanks, Tom, for
presentation.
your hard work.
Bye.